Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of our Open House series. My name is Annie Sklar, and I'm an advisor here at the Berklee Online School. I'm joined today by Allan Chase. He is chair of Berklee's Ear Training Department and author of our new online course, Performance Ear Training. Allan is a jazz saxophonist and composer. He began his teaching career in Berklee in 1981. Since then, he's taught at Tufts University and served as chair of jazz studies and dean of faculty at New England Conservatory. His undergraduate work was in music theory and composition at Arizona State, and he holds a Master of Arts in ethnomusicology from Tufts. He's currently teaching our Basic Ear Training 1 course online here at Berklee, and will be teaching the new Performance Ear Training class for the spring. So welcome, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. Yep. So we're going to be doing a clinic today, Performance Ear Training, give you a sense of, what exactly is ear training, what's going to be going on in this new class, and give you a taste for exactly the type of, exercises, musical assignments that students can expect. Great, so let's jump right in.
Okay. Well, the course starts with the major scale, the most familiar collection of pitches to most musicians, and kind of assumes that students know their major scales on their instrument. The class is going to involve using your instrument, any pitched instrument. Could be a keyboard or any other instrument that plays pitches, and your voice. And so let me give you an example of an exercise from lesson 1 using the major scale. So what you'll hear in this type of exercise, and there are many kinds of exercises in the course, but this is one of the common ones that happens in every lesson, a kind of call and response where you listen to something, then you sing it back, and then you play it on an instrument. Okay? The idea is to make a connection between perceiving the pitches, producing them with your voice to reassure yourself that you know what they are, and also to label them. And we're going to teach solfege, which we can talk about in a minute, to do that, for those who don't know it. Syllables for the notes that identify what the notes are. And then we will, then you'll play it back, in this case on the keyboard.
Okay, sounds good.
So normally you won't be looking at my hands, so you're going to use your ears and not your eyes, right, to do this exercise. So you'll hear in each exercise we always give you a click, and then the tonic chord, the 1 chord of the key, and then the tonic note in a couple of different octaves for men's and women's voices, and then you have time during a count off to find that note with your voice, okay? And then I'll play something.
Do, re, mi.
And then you play it.
Do, fa, mi. Do, mi, so.
Right. So we'll continue expanding from there through many intervals in the major scale, starting with smaller intervals and close together notes and simpler things, and getting a little more adventurous in the second lesson and going into different keys as well.
Okay.
So,
excellent.
Any questions about how that works? Should we talk about solfege?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of students, both at Berklee and at the online school, might not have ever worked, with solfege with movable do, as it's called here. So if you can talk a little bit about what that is and how it plays into these types of exercises, that would be great.
You did that perfectly, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you. So the course assumes that you know the major scale, and if you've had Basic Ear Training 1, which is one of the courses you could take before this, it would teach you movable do solfege up to what you need to know for the first couple of lessons in this course, but you can learn it within the course for those who are ready to jump in. And the kind of solfege that we use, movable do solfege, it's common in England and the United States and in the Kodály system, which many people have as a child in music education, which started in Hungary. And so there are many people around the world who use it. There's also another system called fixed do. In fixed do, this is always do, no matter what key you're in. The note C is in English is always do. So we're using movable do, and in movable do is the tonic note. It's 1. It's a way of saying 1 that you can sing, because it's very hard to sing flat 7 and sharp 11, you know. So, so we need single, pretty sounding, singable syllables, and so we use this transposing movable do system. So do is the tonic of the key. So when you just sang that, do, re, mi, that was correct because do is the tonic, re is the second step, mi is the third step. People worry sometimes, is this going to be hard to learn? Well, we go quite slow. You learn 7 syllables over the first 2 lessons, then you add them 1 at a time until there are actually 17 altogether. But it's not any harder than learning to count to 20 in a foreign language, which many people learn to do in a few hours at the most, if not less than that. You know, if you can do that, you can do this. It's really not that hard to do. We do use the chromatic syllables. So when I say you learn the 7 notes like the notes of the major scale, later when we get to minor, we use may instead of mi, do, may for a minor third. So there's a special name for every note.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Well, let's keep going with the lesson, with the clinic.
Okay. So the next thing that would happen, let's move on. So the first 2 lessons are in major. I won't ask you to sing all of this right now, but let's say in lesson 2, in lesson 1, we're doing, you know, patterns that are very familiar, that resolve, and if people have had the previous Basic Ear Training 1 course, they will be very familiar with these, but they'll just be applying them to their instrument as well. And if they haven't, they'll be very familiar patterns that you hear in millions of songs, what we call tendency tones, where notes resolve to their nearest note of the tonic chord, that kind of thing. The sort of things you hear in all kinds of simple songs. In the second lesson, we expand on the major scales a little bit more, so you might get into, you know, outlining other chords like the 4 chord and the 1 chord. Now this course is on melody and rhythm. It's not really about chords. That's in harmonic ear training, a different course. So here we're outlining chords. We're using them as a melody, just to be clear. Say the 5 chord. Sol, ti, re, do, and then you'd find those notes. And we walk you through this very step by step.
Okay.
You know, no sudden extreme challenges. So do you want to try a couple of those?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so here's the key. We'll put our click back on. And by the way, when you're doing these exercises, they're MP3s with a little click to play button, and you can always stop them, you can always rewind them. Nobody's expected to do them perfectly the first time.
That's the key for ear training, being able to rewind and listen again.
Yeah, the idea is you get a lot out of this lesson. If you can come back to it every day of the week, you'd get 5 or 7 times as much out of it, because it's practice. These are practice tools, they're not tests, you know. Okay, so here's our 1 chord. We're still in major. So you find do with your voice, and then
ti, re, do. Fa, so, mi. Oh, that was wrong.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I was totally wrong.
I was hoping you'd make a mistake, so we'd rewind that, and so you'd find that note, re. It's re. There's do.
Re, do.
Yeah. So.
Re, fa, mi.
Okay, and jumping ahead to lesson 3, I believe it is, as we get into the natural minor and the harmonic minor scales. So those are the scales that sound like. Or. So that's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. is a choice in that scale, that pair of scales between T and Te, the flat 7 and the sharp or major 7th. So let's try a little minor example. Okay.
Ti, re, do. Do, re, mi. Do, ti, la. Oh, that wasn't right.
Yeah, so you knew, how do you know it wasn't right? You knew.
Well, first of all, because I sang la, which
Yeah.
is the major 6, which doesn't
Yeah.
exist in this minor scale.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So what?
So that's
so.
so.
Yeah. So you.
So.
So it's the note above sol, right?
Do, le, sol.
Right. Right, exactly. So, exactly, you know, the idea is to have this be a challenge where you get some of them right and some of them wrong, you do them again, until you start to associate the sound with what it is in the key, which is what the movable do solfege tells you. It's 1, flat 6, 5, or do, le, sol. Nice ways to sing, to learn, to name those notes. Widely used system that's been around for hundreds of years. And then play it on your instrument.
Okay.
If you're a singer or a drummer, you might want to use the keyboard, or if you play a secondary instrument, you could use any instrument, the flute, the cello, the bass, guitar, you know, chromatic harmonica, xylophone, you know.
Whatever
any
works.
pitched instrument will work with this.
Excellent.
You know. If you're away from your, some people worry, like, could I do this homework away from, say I travel a lot. We have lots of students who travel for work or in the military or whatever. You can use a virtual keyboard app on the phone or an iPad or laptop. There are websites which I can provide links to, where, and you just need something where you can find pitches.
Okay.
That's it. You know, you can literally do it on a phone.
Wonderful.
The pitched material.
So obviously this stuff is hard. Your training isn't easy. You know, it can be frustrating, and sometimes if you're not sitting with someone else who can help walk you through it and help you figure out exactly what it is that's going wrong, it can be frustrating. So what do you recommend for your students, you know, when they've kind of hit the wall and are having a hard time figuring out exactly what it is they're hearing?
Well, the thing I love about the online course format is that we're in constant communication through messages and feedback, and there's a lot of things that I can suggest as, you know, or that the course instructor or facilitator of any course can suggest to a student who's stuck, and checking in frequently and just answering those questions is a big part of it. In the chat sessions, the weekly hour of chat, and the many chances to interact. So, you know, I always advise backing up, going slow, starting with what you know. Before doing any of these exercises, none of this stuff is thrown at the student. I'm throwing it at you, and you. It's been a while since you used these techniques, and it's really helping to demonstrate it. So a student in this class will do a number of warm-ups before they do these things. They'll sing the scale, they'll look at it in a few different keys, they'll listen to it, we'll go over the common patterns in each lesson. And this is just part of the course we're talking about here, this call and response thing, but it's an important part. Maybe I should give an overview. We go through major, minor, all the forms of the minor scale. There are 4 forms if you count the Dorian mode, which is common. And then the other modes, and the blues scales and pentatonic scales. So it's basically all the tonal material that's common in jazz, popular music, gospel, R&B, a lot of world musics, you know, and much classical music in melodies is all given in this course, so you have all 12 notes by the end, because if you can do the Phrygian mode and the Lydian mode, and you don't have to know what that is before you begin, it's very much explained in the course, you will have all 12 notes under your belt, kind of, you know, recognizable in any key, be able to find them on an instrument, sing them, know what they are, recognize them when you hear them.
Excellent.
So that's the goal. There's also a rhythmic part of the course too. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Could we maybe do one of the like a blues scale
Yeah,
based
let's
exercise?
do that. Yeah, sure. So I'll just stay in C for these exercises, but of course in the course we're going to go into other keys to make sure we're not only thinking in one key. So again, I'm going to play a major, minor. I'll play a minor chord. And we'll use the minor blues scale, which is so. So here we go. You can try this at home. I always advise finding the note, just getting your voice. If you're not a professional singer, you know, you might need that 2 bars to get ready.
Do, me, fa, say.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Okay, so you back up and do that again.
all right.
So it's sol, and say is the 5th flat. So
say.
that'll be
Okay.
explained.
Sol, say, fa, me.
Okay. We're also going to cover a major kind of blues scale that is, it's often left out of when people explain blues, this sound. So it's major pentatonic, do, re, mi, sol, la, but also me,
Okay.
blue note. So it's do, re, mi, sol, la, and me is the extra note.
Okay.
So it's only 6 notes. So we'll try that. Maybe we could skip over this since we've done it so many times, but.
Do.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Do, me, re, do, sol. Oh,
Okay,
that
so
was not the right note.
yeah, and that is the #1 most common mistake in the scale and why it's important to learn it. Do, la.
La. Okay.
Do, la is sort of an interval you don't expect sometimes, and it takes, I always say that's the last note people learn. And it's very common to think it goes down and left, so it probably went from do to sol. It sounds familiar, but so you learn to make those perceptions. So that would be an example of the major blues scale. At the very end of the course, this is going to sound very challenging if you haven't ever done it before, but we're going to get into so things that mix the different modes. So you get sort of dissonant and sort of exotic sounding scales. And again, we get there through slow step-by-step exercises.
Wonderful.
But that's how you get command over all 12 notes of the chromatic scale. So the idea is that you can recognize what you hear. If you're an improviser or a composer, songwriter, you hear something in your head and you know what it is without having to grope for 10 minutes to find it on the piano. And I think one of the things about this kind of melodic ear training that's most important, and people don't always realize until they've done it, is that it makes you rhythmically more confident. Because if you know what's going to come out of your instrument when you press down the key or pluck the string or blow into it, you play with confidence and expression and passion, and it comes across what you're feeling. The more what you hear in your imagination is connected to what you play, the more expression is in it, whether it's a prepared piece or interpreting a song or improvising a lick or a fill or a solo or an ending or whatever. So that's the goal. I guess maybe at the very outset I should say, with the mission of the course is to let people make that connection internally between sound and what is that sound, and so that they can make music with more passion and confidence that comes out and communicates with the listener. You know? So
for this course, are you going to be doing a lot of transcription? Is that a piece of it?
Yes. So that's another part of this course. It's a little, I'd say it's about maybe 30 to 40% of the homework involves figuring out what you're hearing and taking the time to write it down.
Sure.
And that is transcription or dictation. And So you're listening to some music. Sometimes it's what we call real music, excerpts of actual classic pieces of music by artists, all kinds of artists, from John Coltrane to Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, to world music people, to classic jazz singers and pop and R&B and gospel singers, singer-songwriters, all sorts of music. And listening to little excerpts, singing and playing them back, writing them down.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think every teacher I've ever had, either at Berklee or anywhere else, has always told me that transcription, that's the thing, you have to do it. So,
well, it's how you learn what the material that people are using is, and instead of just looking at it in a book and going, oh yeah, that's what it is, you have to actually own it because you figured it out yourself.
Participating.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this has been excellent. Thank you so much for the clinic. We want to make sure we take a couple of minutes here to answer some questions from any of our viewers out there. We have one here from Carolyn, who said she's always been told that she was tone deaf. She tries to sing, she can't stay in tune, but she's read there's no such thing as tone deafness. So what do you have to say about that?
That's a good question. For a lot of people, and it took me a while myself, I remember this process, and getting control over your vocal muscles and getting them to produce the sound you mean for them to produce, your voice to produce the sound you mean, and to recognize that your own voice through your ear is different from recognizing somebody else. And this is a process that can take some steps. We have a lesson in this course on pitch matching and vocal issues. There's a whole kind of clinic built into the course on this subject. I do recommend that people who have never used their voice, they might want to look at the Basic Ear Training 1 and then take this as a second or third course after that. There are various options after that course, and that's a more slow-moving and patient approach to this material, to the basic idea of singing and so on. What's different about this course is you involve the instrument too. But yes, I knew that would happen, and that's an issue for some people. And sometimes people play their instrument very well, and they just have trouble singing. They're kind of, and everyone has these moments, unless they're singing all the time. Do 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 do. Finding that note. And if it's really challenging, we've covered some exercises. They're very meditative exercises. They're like listening, imagining yourself singing the note, sliding up to it if necessary, humming first and then singing it, and then do, getting familiar with those muscles.
Excellent.
And so if somebody feels they can get that going, they'll be fine in this class, but we do pay some special attention to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in terms of, what somebody who is interested in this course should be ready to do, can you talk a little bit about just, what the expectations might be in terms of the knowledge that you would already have coming into this class?
You don't have to know movable do solfege going into this class. I would say it would be very important to know your major scales on your instrument and in notation, so be able to recognize, an A major scale, know that it has 3 sharps, know how to play it at a moderate pace on the instrument. You don't have to have a lot of chops. None of the things are fast. So for instance, somebody who's using a keyboard who's mainly a percussionist or singer and doesn't really play fluent piano, for example, or any instrument, could still do all these exercises. You don't have to be fast. You just have to know where the notes are. I would say reading really basic rhythms prior to this class is good. So, eighth notes, whole notes, quarter notes, half notes. I didn't say those in the right order, but you know what I mean. Basic da, 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 da. If you can read rhythms like that, you could do, we get into syncopation and things. So basic music reading, basic knowledge of major scales, enough instrumental facility to find the notes of those scales on any instrument.
Okay.
If that's all somebody has and they've done very little besides that, it's going to be challenging, but it's possible.
Okay.
And somebody who's a more fluent, experienced musician in any of those areas will find it very doable.
Excellent. So we have another question here about developing good relative pitch. And this person was suggested to them by a trombone teacher, and trombone's players usually have pretty good ears, so they usually know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That you should walk by your piano every day and just play the same note and listen to it and then walk away. And every time you walk by your piano, you should do that.
Yeah.
Whether or not you think that's a good method for doing it, do you have any suggestions for just, you know, ways that anyone in their daily practice routine can start to develop better relative pitch and just finally honing their ear?
Well, when you do that, you're trying to develop what's called absolute pitch, or at least a clue towards perfect pitch. So you're trying to remember, have long-term memory of a specific pitch, and I do that. I play that every time I go to a keyboard, and I sing it first and see if I get it right, and I'm about 85% of the time. Perfect pitch or long-term pitch memory is relatively rare in most cultures, and it's not an expectation of this course. If you have it, great, you can use it. But relative pitch is when I tell you this is C, and now you sing from that note certain intervals, and you can tell the distances between them, you know, like do, re, mi, as we were doing. So this course is all about relative pitch, and that's what this course is. It's about developing, in relation to a given note, do or the tonic, what are all the other notes? Can I recognize them? Yeah. Can I use them in melodies and play them back and sing them back?
And it's so important when you're a performer, whether you're on stage, in the studio, a writer, an arranger or something like that, just to be able to, know that, okay, this is the note I want to start from. And then I hear this line over here, what is it and how do I get it under my fingers? So it's a, crucial skill for any musician, I think.
I should mention there's an optional sight singing track in this course for people who want it to be even more challenging, or who are doing it for certain kinds of college credit that might apply in certain situations, which I don't know all the details of, but maybe some people watching will know. If you want to include sight singing, there's a sight singing lesson in every lesson, and it's optional. You do not have to do it.
Excellent.
For most students. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's about all we have time for today, but thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to everyone out there for joining us today.